When we started sharing information, we invented language. And before that, we probably used body language. In high school, me and my friend were eating mulberries off his mulberry tree in the front yard and talking about how this is the most ape-like we've ever felt. I thought about how other primates in our prehistoric past must have gathered around fruit trees and started associating with each other. Maybe forming tribes or settling in a fruit-abundant area defending their tree territory. Which got me thinking, is this why whoever wrote the Bible associates trees with knowledge? Is this how the idea started? Also, the Deku tree, grandmother willow, and like the tree brain thing from the Avatar movies being other examples of this like archetypical symbol of like a tree being associated with knowledge. It's like it was written into our instinctual memory when we were just proto-monkeys picking fruit off fruit trees. And then we started making sounds to each other, maybe creating the first shared knowledge. But that's just like something I thought of while eating fruit off a fruit tree. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's true or backed by any sort of science. It's just like a schizo theory. Anyway, after spoken language was written to preserve information apart from human memory, I think that I read that as a society we became more like logistical with trade. So trading got like way more complex. And then it became necessary for like common people to become literate, because at the time the only people who were literate were like scribes, and they would just like translate text for like royals, I think. But once we started like trading and like ships were going here and there, we needed a way for like warehouse workers to keep inventory and produce reports. And this is how like being literate kind of first started. And then we were using like papyrus and stuff like that, not just like clay tablets anymore. And then eventually the printing press came out and everyone started reading, because I think that people wanted to read the Bible themselves. And I don't remember if this was like a Protestant thing or what, because the whole thing about like Protestants is that they were like, you should learn from the Bible and not from an institution. And so I think they advocated for people to be more literate so they could read the Bible. And then, you know, you got the printing press making Bibles, and I'm sure that's not like the only reason. Like there's also like newspapers, and people started becoming more informed, and people started reading books as like the main form of entertainment, aside from like theater and stuff like that. So then we started sending each other letters for like hundreds of years. And this used to like, this had been going on already. As soon as like papyrus was invented, like we started sending letters through like either like delivery workers going across towns or like carrier pigeon, stuff like that. But then the postal service became way more sophisticated. A lot of people right now joke about how back then you'd communicate through letters and you'd have to wait a long time for a reply. Unlike today where like you message someone and you get an instant reply. People joke that like, oh, you'd be waiting a week. But that's really not true, because back in like, I want to say like the 1700s to like the 1800s, there was like a mailman who would come by like multiple times a day. So like if you sent out a letter to someone in town, in the same town, you would get a reply like within the day, or at least even by afternoon, I think, because you would send a letter to like, hey, come to my house for lunch, you know? And yeah, so it's not like you were waiting for weeks. Then over time, as we know, the telegraph was invented and capitalism pounced on it immediately and started throwing up telegraph wires all over the world from town to town. There were like telegraph stations where people would just go and get like their telegram, and it was a lot more efficient than just sending someone from town to town or a pigeon. Now we could send messages across long distances quickly. And investors even started using what is called a stock ticker. And a stock ticker uses Morse code to send stock prices directly to a person's house. So if you see like Like in Peaky Blinders, there's a scene where Thomas Shelby, he becomes more of a businessman, and he gets like a little device in his house that prints out like a little strip of paper with like information on it, and like that's a stock ticker, and it tells him like what the stock prices are, if the stock is like, if the stock market is like crashing or whatever. Like the people who have stock tickers are the first to know. And it like this thing was kind of like an app, weirdly. Like we had apps all the way back in the telegraph days. Eventually we out of the telegraph technology, we built the telephone system, which became increasingly optimized from one phone in the house that everyone was like sharing. And this was like for a long time, everyone was just like from the start of like the 20th century, the 1900s, to like maybe like the 70s or 80s. I'd say maybe even the 60s, where like you would just have like one phone in the entire house, and there would be like a like even an alcove in the wall. Like it almost looked like a little shrine for the phone because it was so important. And then you got like multiple phones in the house. So people started having their own phones in their own room, and they could have like private conversations. Then in the 80s, the cell phone was invented. And this just was like you could have instant conversation with someone wherever you were. And at the start, the richest people had them, and they had like the giant cell phones that were like they had giant batteries. They were fucking big. They were like the size of a brick. And these were like the early adopters of the cell phone. Probably cost, who knows how much the telephone bill cost, and like the phone itself, I'm sure was like thousands of dollars. But there were also like car phones, and like I did research about like video calling, and that had been around since like the 60s, but it started out with, I think it started out with like really rich people, like executives doing like board meetings, and maybe like government officials having to do like face-to-face communication. And you had to have like the whole like giant camera, and it was just really, really inconvenient. So like that wouldn't be a thing for like another half decade. But around the time the cell phone was invented, the internet was also invented. The internet started out as like a communication network between colleges, and then it quickly just like grew from there. People started getting like personal computers in their own houses, because a computer at first only institutions could have them, because they were so fucking big. They would take up space in an entire room, and not a small room, like a big room. You would need like almost an entire floor dedicated to a computer that wasn't even that good. But they did have like a rudimentary internet where they could communicate with each other, and the computer like would do its job. It was more than a calculator. It was something that could, you know, just do more than what a human being could do faster. So it was worth going into. And then by the 90s, a lot of people had a computer. A lot of people had a computer in their house. This was a revolution in communication, because now it's not just like sending letters, sending messages, sending, you know, texts. It was web pages, entire web pages, forums, chat rooms. People were like communicating with each other like with more complexity, I would say. And then at some point you could watch video over the internet, and that was a lot of information being relayed, because video conveys a lot of information. We already had television for like since the 30s, maybe 30s, 40s. But television, the thing with television, it only went one way. It wasn't really a communication device. It was like a radio. It was like a broadcast. It was a broadcasting device. So it was one source out to like millions. And that's how radio was also. I mean, there was like ham radio and stuff like that, but I mean, not everyone had one. So you couldn't talk back to the TV or the programmers of the television network unless you called. And some shows even had people call in live in order to feel more like you're participating, which is like the whole thing with Twitch chat these days. But with the internet, people started communicating very rapidly, but there was still separated space from the digital world and the physical world. In the 90s and 2000s, the digital and the physical had their own place in our lives. There wasn't like one wasn't competing with the other. This is because like the early telephone, there was only one computer in the house because they were so expensive. So again, you had like the little shrine, you had the desk dedicated to a desktop, which was a big computer with a tower, and a giant monitor, which was like almost the size of a CRT television. I mean, it could be the size of a CRT television, depending on like how big your TV was, I guess. So it wasn't really feasible to be on it all the time. And not just because there was only one in the house, it was more also because like forum threads weren't engaged with so rapidly like today in a Reddit comment section or a Twitter thread. Like a thread would be there for like days and people would just come by and like just put in their input and, you know, maybe reply to something that someone else put, and then days later that person would log on and look at who replied and reply back. So you'd quickly run out of things to do because the internet moved so slow back then. It's not like today where like you could keep refreshing like Twitter and you would get new tweets, you would get new news stories. It was not like that back then. Everyone had to do everything like manually. There was very minimal algorithms. To like none. I mean, the like websites spread through word of mouth. I think like you would build a website and then you would tell your friends and then your friends would tell their friends and then or you would even put out an advertisement in like some place where like-minded people would go. Or you'd put up a flyer, you know, like a web page was something that you discovered. It wasn't something that an algorithm showed to you. It was very much a hobby thing. But as time went on, you'd find more people with multiple computers in the house, some even tinier than normal, called laptops. Some you could take wherever you would go. These were called PDAs. They were tiny. They fit in your hand. They were for like organization. They were kind of like primitive smartphones. They had like little apps on there and stuff, like just like set your schedule. Maybe you could send an email, like very, very primitive smartphones. But around this time, TVs became cheaper and lighter, and the screens became bigger and more high definition. Then the smartphone was invented around the mid 2000s, and everything just came together. All forms of communication just swirled. They like it was like a vortex. Everything just went into this one thing. All forms of communication. So smartphones became more powerful. It could fit more functions within itself. The world's communication network has increasingly become faster and all-encompassing, especially today with Starlink providing coverage for pretty much all the inhabited space on Earth. Phones are tiny computers. It's the telegraph system and the post office. It's television. It's forums. It's chat rooms. It's sending letters. You know, like it's all there. It's where else can it go? Right now, it looks like it keeps trying to evolve in some way where we are integrated biologically. Because with the invention of the smartwatch, the phone was even more accessible. Okay, it wasn't just in your pocket. It was kind of always within view and attached to your arm. And I know not everyone has a smartwatch, but I think a few years ago, like a lot of people had them. And I think to this day, a lot of people have them. You know, it is kind of like a phone for your phone. It's a mini little phone, you know, on your wrist at all times. With smart glasses, now it's on your face and can see what you see and hear what you hear. Elon Musk is trying to take this further and get everyone to put a chip in their nervous system so we can upgrade our sensory and cognitive capabilities. And this is what I'm talking about. Like, technology is trying to get in our body. It wants to be close to us. It's just getting closer and closer. But a lot of people reject this. Every time the tech companies try to cross the separating line, which is like our skin barrier, people subconsciously reel back from it, because people fundamentally don't like their bodies to be invaded in any way whatsoever. Not by needles, not by germs, not by other people, not by foreign objects. So it's getting people to accept a communication method that penetrates their very being. In order to get people to accept that, it would have to be something that would have to add an inarguable benefit to your life. Like this thing, I'm just not going to stick a cell phone in my body if I don't have to, you know? But that's exactly what Elon promises. People who've lost functionality in their bodies can gain it back. The blind can see, the paralyzed can walk. Just let me stick my computer in your brain, says Elon Musk. And maybe that would be capitalism's foot in the door, so to speak. This technology allows differently abled people to gain the functionality this world was built around. It like, if you can walk up the stairs. If you can see, you don't need to have Braille on the signs. So maybe it's not so bad after all. If we just forget about the animals that went crazy after getting this installed, like the chimps that clawed their eyes out, the pigs that went ballistic. Forget the risks of things like this, because repossession is a thing we have now. And there's no telling whether the government would allow repossession of like body modifications or brain chips, you know, like what if you can't pay your medical bills? Is Tesla going to send a repo man to come like take your fucking eyes out? You never know. Also, if you have a brain chip, like, there's a good chance we're going to get ads just like beamed directly into our consciousness, even if it's like while we're sleeping. We need to not allow tech companies into our minds and bodies, because that is the advertising industry's wet dream. We're all very aware of how business people think and how exploitative they are, no matter what the humanitarian image they are trying to project is. The shit they build doesn't work. Windows is broken and needs constant updates because it's shoving in more ways to harvest data from your computer. Cell phones go bad after a few years. Appliances are built so cheaply. Tesla is, because it's so software focused and everything runs on electricity, nothing's analog in that thing. There are people driving right off the cliff because they cannot brake and stuff. It's just not listening to them. The steering wheel's not listening to them. They crash into a pole and they blow up. The only optimization happening these days is how much and how fast they can withdraw data from your computer. So do you trust them with your brain? We shouldn't even be putting this stuff in our cars, but we do. The automotive gauge cluster is just a straight up tablet now in 2026, and so is the center console. When you make something more complex, it becomes easier to damage and much harder to repair. Unless you charge more for materials, but today everything is as cheaply constructed as possible, or the average person couldn't buy it. I will not be getting a brain chip if it's going to be anything like the technological environment of today, with zero consumer protection. Where we're at, tech and communication wise, is very strange. Everything has to be connected and communicating now, not just people, but the things in our house that have no reason to be connected to the internet. Like, why does my fridge need an update? It's just a cold box that holds food. I don't have an Amazon Echo or Dot in my house because I don't want to talk to a glorified remote. This phenomenon is called the Internet of Things. And when it first came around and people started noticing, a lot of people theorized that it would make our lives better because it would make everything more convenient. Your temperature, it would know what temperature you want in your house. As soon as you walked in the door, it would turn the TV on to your favorite channel. But all of this stuff is so unnecessary. It's just really, really fucking unnecessary. And it doesn't even do the thing it says. It just collects data. It listens in on your conversations. It makes you a better target for advertising. Now we have robots on the horizon, and the tech sector is trying to get us to accept letting drones scan our entire house for, quote, security reasons. Like a doorbell camera that law enforcement can tap into at all times wasn't enough. At what point do normies wake up and start saying, hey, our mindless consumerism is actively building a police state? It really pisses me off, to be honest. All it takes is one smart and terrible president to turn all this shit into 1984. As of this video being made, the government is trying to pass bills that make any form of speech against Israel anti-Semitic and punishable by law. Letting your heater become a listening device is only helping them monitor us. Yeah, maybe it catches a criminal once in a while, but it's putting everyone's freedom at stake. It's a really good thing the current president is an old moron, because if the intelligence agencies were more organized, they'd be going to town on our citizens like how England is right now. But it's not just capitalism driving all of this. There is a fanatical belief within the tech industry started by a man named Ray Kurzweil, who has basically been preaching to anybody who'd listen about the singularity. And in this context, the singularity is when technology and humanity meld together. This is what they're aiming for. This is why they want to put chips in our brains so we can integrate our bodies with technology and merge our consciousness with AI to become one globally spanning organism. These people really aren't spiritual, but everyone has to have some kind of existential belief. And to them, this is as far as their materialist-based logic, front-loaded brains will let them go. They don't believe in an astral plane, so they tried building a laughable imitation of it, which failed. Now, because they can't quantify their own souls or a collective consciousness, they are trying to forge everyone's consciousness together with glue and duct tape. A heaven built by Silicon Valley would be an absolute hell for the average person. I don't see this going well for them. Like I said earlier, humans tend to reject technology as soon as it stops serving a purpose. And right now, the tech sector is overinvested in AI, but AI hasn't made any meaningful improvement to our lives. It's more like a fun toy that's quickly losing its novelty since OpenAI and Nvidia keeps pitching it as the biggest things in cell phones, but it really can't measure up to the promises of its creators. Every business that implements AI is getting slapped in the face thinking it could already replace human cognitive ability. There are reports of companies firing their accountants, getting AI to do their job, then the AI just makes up numbers, and the company has to rehire the accountants again because their finances are fucked. If anything, it's slowing down productivity and sapping our collective brain power since there's basically no way to stop kids from using it to do their schoolwork. We really should be giving the diploma to ChatGPT instead of the student. So right now, it's smart enough to get a student to pass, but not smart enough to do their career. And they are definitely not getting smarter because no matter how much processing power you add to the LLM, it doesn't get better. Maybe it comes to the conclusion faster, but the cognitive capability is not increasing the way it should according to the average tech bro projections. If AI is the only thing holding up the economy right now, it's absolutely going to come crashing down sometime this year or the next. So where do we go from here? I think Silicon Valley is going to realize it can't just make empty promises and force AI adoption onto people who don't need it. They'll probably continue optimizing it, but it really seems like for now, it's at its peak potential. I just hope companies go back to making technology more user experience oriented instead of look at this flashy toy oriented. Because even the average person is getting sick of constantly getting ads thrown at them and apps not working properly and AI co-pilot and AI this and AI that doesn't help anything. It's just adding useless shit without fixing what's already there. I'm beginning to see a lot of people starting to move away from streaming services and back to physical media, which is funny because they really tried getting us hooked on streaming so we could forget about buying Blu-rays and DVDs and CDs, and they don't even announce when those are available anymore. They just send out the streaming release date. But if everybody goes back to discs, then companies will have no choice but to comply. They could collectively stop selling physical media, but people will just pirate it and burn it onto a disc to keep in their home. At this point, it's more convenient than getting bombarded with ads, which is why the original wave of pirating existed in the first place. It's just the system trying to maintain equilibrium. This is why I think the way things are now in terms of communication are probably the best it's ever been, which coming from what I just, like everything I just said sounds insane, But the tech sector's apocalyptic beliefs aside, as a species, we've never been more connected with each other and seen what everyone's lives are like. And you could argue this is one of the bad things about the rapid pace of communication today, but it's only because so much of the people in our world are dealing with hardship and don't have emotional intelligence. So it's easy to be an asshole online or lie, but you have to realize that people that do this are probably dealing with undiagnosed mental issues or emotional dysregulation. We saw this in the 2010s when everybody was coming online, that there was a big swing for the woke agenda. But this was really just a result of everyone coming together and saying, holy shit, some of us have really extreme contempt for marginalized groups of people or groups of people just different from them. I do think the left went a little overboard with trying to install empathy within everyone, whether they wanted it or not, or whether they were ready for it or not. But again, the system will maintain equilibrium. No popular ideology or strategy can ever go too far in one direction without creating a force of resistance. We used to have our culture entirely dictated to us by a few television companies, then came cable television, then YouTube and streaming. What was once a unified stream of culture is now a shower of competing mindscapes, all fighting for attention. The only thing unifying us now, believe it or not, are memes. And we get to the subject of the video. We've ditched the monoculture for what I'm calling the Memeosphere. The idea is this: now that communication is so instant and rapid, it takes a big event to echo through all the dislocated online communities. Events, for example, like the killing of Charlie Kirk, the Iran war, the Diddy trial, the Epstein files, and JD Vance babyface edits. These things were huge and spawned lots and lots of memes. These are not the only things, but there were a lot of things. These are just the most, these come to mind like immediately. Memes are the things we can all see regardless of what echo chamber we're in, because a good one spread. The best TikToks end up on Twitter. The Twitter buzz ends up on TikTok. Both get discussed as news on YouTube. And all this happens in waves. Like boom, the event, and then memes ripple outward. And then maybe there's a counter pulse and the meme gets transformed. And, you know, it's all just like waves bouncing off each other. But everyone is seeing these memes evolving in real time. And that's what's important and bringing us together in the current moment, weirdly. I think as humans, we all love drama. We all love a good story with multiple viewpoints. Even right now, there's a story going on about whether Chaperone sent a security guard after a little girl or not. I don't think she did. Yeah, she is like an asshole sometimes, and she's just being a normal person. Like I think a lot of people have a problem with Chaperone because she wants to be treated like a normal person, and they're like, you're a celebrity, like let us, you know, treat you like shit, let us hound you for autographs and stuff. And like, this is not even what happened. Apparently, according to the mom of the little girl, they both went by her table. The little girl went to go look really quickly, and the mom said Chaperone like didn't even see them. And so a security guard came by and talked to the little girl very rudely, like, do not be doing this shit, you know, like leave celebrities alone. And then the mom got upset and told her husband, and the husband put Chaperone on blast. And Chaperone is just like having no idea this happened. So they blame Chaperone for, initially they said that she sent a security guard, which in today's world you would not do that shit, because that could easily become drama, obviously. And so like you'd have to be really stupid to do that. And I really don't think she did that shit, especially because the mom said she didn't even see them. It was pretty much all on the security guard. But anyway, drama is just one of those things that's never going away. It's always been around, and I'd argue it's more intense today because everybody has an opinion on it. And you can see the most compelling viewpoints because they get tons of shares. Before the internet was widespread, there were entire TV networks and magazines dedicated to reporting and manufacturing celebrity drama. And people would literally send emails or a letter with their opinions on the matter, and they would get displayed on the show, and then that would be a topic of discussion. Now that's just what culture is today. Every notable thing gets wrapped up and transformed by everybody. It's all just opinions and memes. It's how we stay informed and on the same page. The government can't control this because memes are site-to-site transmissible, meaning a meme on Twitter can be understood on Reddit and YouTube if it's big enough. That's why they're trying so hard to label anti-Israel speech as anti-Semitism, and it isn't working. The anti-Semitism label used to be very effective for the public to police itself. If you said something genuinely anti-Semitic, you'd rightfully have a bunch of people calling you out. But the powers that be are trying to tie that policing system to stop people from talking about a genocide that's actually going on and has nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It has everything to do with Israel and what they're doing. And it's just weakening the anti-Semitism label to the point where actual anti-Semites feel free to say the wildest shit because no one's going to tell them anything, because no one cares about anti-Semitism when you're making it solely about Israel and Zionism. It just goes to show how much it can backfire when institutions try to utilize memes for their own agendas. They were able to do it on Twitter for a short time when the Wendy's Twitter account used to start drama with other fast food chain accounts. But then they all started doing it and it became cringy. The only politician who successfully dominated memes for a long time was Trump. But he didn't purposely go out and try to make himself a meme. He has a long history in show business and knows that small, memorable sound bites spread the furthest. The more outrageous he got, the further it spread, and this worked out very well for him. Even people on the other side of the political fence were quoting him and laughing at his snarky remarks. But now he's old as fuck and can't get people to accept the Iran war, to the point where he's posting increasingly long and wordy tirades on Truth Social where he really doesn't say anything of substance except to threaten those he deems as traitors. Nobody can consciously control the Memeosphere, and it freaks out everybody in power because the truth usually gets out and becomes amplified. The issues that leave the news cycle, like the Epstein files, are constantly given new life. Like some stories you can't kill. You used to be able to. There was one source of information, the newspapers, the TV networks. The government could just go to them and say, hey, kill this story. But like, they can't do that shit anymore. It's freaking them out. The news no longer controls the public consciousness. They cannot manufacture consent. We are suspicious of any manufacturing going on. Memes control the public consciousness right now. Memes. And the only way to stop the memes is to shut the whole thing down.